Did Poland secretly move to bypass U.S. controls over Patriot missile transfers, sparking questions about whether Warsaw circumvented its American partner to send advanced air defense systems elsewhere? After ignoring an urgent request from Washington, did Polish authorities go ahead and quietly transfer Patriot batteries to Ukraine, a move that could inflame tensions with both the United States and Russia? Was the initial alarm from Washington overblown, or does Poland's undisclosed Patriot deal genuinely undermine U.S. policy and politically unsettle President Trump and his allies? Could a clandestine agreement to supply Ukraine with Patriot missiles provoke a direct Russian response, raising fears that the covert transfer might escalate the conflict into a broader confrontation? Polish authorities reportedly moved Patriot missiles out of their own military stockpile and into Ukrainian hands, a covert transfer that bypassed public disclosure and raised urgent questions about Warsaw's unilateral decision-making. Sources say the secret shipment of Patriot interceptors occurred in the spring of 2026, a period when the conflict's dynamics and diplomatic sensitivity made such a transfer especially consequential. The weapons were taken from Poland's operational inventory rather than from surplus stocks, a choice that noticeably reduced the country's own air defense reserves and left questions about how Warsaw will cover the resulting gap. Patriot interceptors continue to rank among NATO's most expensive and technically demanding air defense munitions, making each loss difficult and costly to replace on short notice. Production lines for advanced interceptors are under intense strain as demand surges from active conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, squeezing manufacturing capacity and prolonging delivery times. A wave of targeted Russian strikes on Patriot batteries in Ukraine has sharply increased Kyiv's need for replacement interceptors, accelerating depletion rates and heightening procurement urgency. Many European NATO members have already drawn down large portions of their Patriot interceptor stockpiles to bolster Ukraine, leaving Allied inventories significantly depleted and vulnerable. Unlike some partners, Poland had maintained relatively larger Patriot reserves because of its frontline position and acute security threats, a precaution that made its recent transfer politically and militarily notable. Poland's geography, sharing frontiers with Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia's Kaliningrad exclave, amplifies its defense concerns, making any reduction in air defense capability a matter of both national and NATO-wide significance. Earlier this year, at the height of the Iran conflict, Warsaw declined a direct U.S. request for Patriot interceptors, saying it could not spare the systems despite intense Allied pressure. Polish officials repeatedly argued that their Patriot missiles were essential not only for national air defense but also for safeguarding NATO's vulnerable eastern flank, making any transfer politically and militarily fraught. Government spokespeople publicly insisted that Poland's Patriot batteries would remain in place and would not be relocated, signaling a firm commitment to domestic and regional security needs. U.S. military sources say American forces launched more than 800 Patriot interceptors in a furious 5-day period against incoming Iranian strikes, a tempo that rapidly consumed U.S. missile stocks. As a result of intense operations, Washington's own Patriot missile reserves were severely drawn down, leaving U.S. inventories thinner than defense planners had anticipated. Polish officials argued that, with Washington's large-scale use of interceptors, the United States had effectively committed roughly half of NATO's available air defense capacity, increasing Allied vulnerability. In public statements, Warsaw emphasized that protecting Poland's national security would always take precedence over external requests, framing the issue as an existential duty to its citizens. But despite those earlier denials, subsequent reporting indicates Poland later chose to divert Patriot missiles from its own stocks to Ukraine, a reversal that surprised many allies. By prioritizing Ukraine's urgent battlefield requirements, Warsaw effectively placed Kyiv's immediate defense needs ahead of preserving its own interceptor reserves, a calculation with strategic consequences. The decision to transfer interceptors to Ukraine also ran counter to U.S. appeals for Allied assistance in replenishing America's depleted Patriot inventory, complicating cooperation among partners. U.S. officials have reportedly warned Warsaw about the possibility of future Russian actions targeting Poland, according to reports. The Independent said Moscow could target critical infrastructure or stage a limited border incident to raise tensions. The warning comes shortly after Poland halted plans to transfer additional MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine. Warsaw said Kyiv failed to deliver the promised drone technology despite Poland's offer of military assistance. Poland has remained one of Ukraine's strongest military and political backers since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. Amid these developments, sources told Polish outlet Anet that Russia could stage a provocation within the coming months. The reported objective would be to test NATO's resolve and increase pressure over continued Western support for Ukraine. Sources said possible scenarios include drone strikes or missile attacks against key Polish infrastructure. They also warned of a limited ground incursion that could be portrayed as an accidental crossing of the border. Officials reportedly fear Russian or Belarusian troops could cite GPS errors or rescue missions as justification. Sources claimed Moscow could use such pressure to demand reduced Western military support for Ukraine. Baltic security sources also warned that similar hybrid provocations could be directed at other neighboring NATO members. The Independent said Russia's heavily militarized Kaliningrad exclave remains a potential launch point for such operations.
Konstantinovka is a very significant strategic line and represents a crucial step toward capturing such an important, I would say joint, fortified area as Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. No one should have any doubt that our military is advancing smoothly, and we see concrete results. Of course, the Kiev regime is fighting back, trying to make an illusion for its handlers and its NATO partners to create the impression that it is somehow capable of exerting pressure. But those who understand the situation know that this is not the case.
The Kiev regime times these actions to coincide with major summits. The NATO summit is coming up soon. By all accounts, should we expect more serious provocations?
We must be prepared for provocations and remain vigilant at all times. There's a war going on. It's a real war. You know why this is a war. It started out as a special military operation, but it continues as a war because Berlin, Paris, The Hague, Oslo, Washington, unfortunately, too, actively support Kiev. They are helping take aim through their satellites. They are helping direct foreign weapons at our targets through their entire infrastructure. Under these circumstances, we must be fully aware of the situation. The Kiev regime is capable of anything.
You've just listed all these Western capitals. The question naturally arises, why are we trying to figure out our relations with the Kiev regime? We need to settle things with them, don't we? With those who are stirring up war.
This is a factor that exacerbates the situation. I am referring to the European Union, which is gradually transforming into a military political bloc.
We cannot rule out even greater provocations by the Kiev regime. Zelensky stated yesterday that only the island of Moscow will stop Putin. I don't know what he means by that. What do you think of this rhetoric and these statements and actions by the Kiev regime?
Well, the main thing, I suppose, isn't rhetoric, but actions. These actions are of a terrorist nature. The Kiev regime is striking our energy facilities and civilian infrastructure, targets that have absolutely nothing to do with the military-industrial complex. This is a completely obvious manifestation of the Kiev regime's terrorist nature. Why is this intensifying now? Because the situation on the front lines is deteriorating for Kiev with each passing day. Our troops are advancing.
There have been articles in the British and Polish press. They report that, in light of everything that's happening, it cannot be ruled out that Russia is preparing to attack Poland in the coming months. Have you seen them?
There are a lot of horror stories being published about Russia. In any case, it makes sense to think about them. There are a great many companies in Poland that manufacture drones, which then fly toward us and attack our military personnel. Of course, there's nothing good about that.
They need to remember that the situation could develop in any way.
I wouldn't go so far as to become some sort of doomsday prophet, but this is a fact that this is happening on Polish territory. You remember the publication by our defense ministry with a list of companies detailing their geographical locations across many European countries. We remain open to peace talks. It would be preferable for us to achieve all our objectives through peaceful diplomatic negotiations. We hope that the European Union will not succeed in completely dashing these prospects. In this regard, we hope that U.S. mediators will continue their efforts as acts of goodwill.
Western media report that U.S. President Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and businessman Jared Kushner are in almost daily contact with Moscow. Is this really the case?
That might be an exaggeration, but contact through the existing channels is indeed quite frequent. They are busy at the moment. Once they've got time, they'll always be welcome in Moscow.
Are there any specific dates on the horizon yet?
No.
Poland and Ukraine concluded an agreement about some sort of eternal peace and eternal love. What do you think of what's happening now?
There are many people in Kiev whose hobby is to bite the hand that feeds them. We remember this all well from our own experience. But now the Poles have experienced that. The Kiev regime glorifies Nazi collaborators and Nazis who murder Poles. Is this not the ultimate paradox of modern reality in Europe? They were ready to put up with it for a while longer. But Kiev has now gone beyond reason. Even cynicism has ceased to help the Poles in this situation.
It keeps on going beyond reason. Some kind of pantheon has already been created.
Yes, they have gone too far in their worship of the Nazis.